Greetings, community. This is Frank, and I've tracked down Denis Loubet, and I'm going to grill him over his past and tell us what he does. So, thanks for taking the time to join me.
Sure. Hold my feet to the fire.
Yeah. So I want to start by saying, by asking, when you were young, everybody starts with a box of crayons or something, and they start drawing.
Yeah.
But at some point, you looked at your artwork and said, I'm pretty good, I can make a living at this. Or did you?
Well, I was drawing pictures. I come from a line of artists. My mother was an art consultant for our school district. My grandmother was a portrait painter. My father could wield a mean brush when he wanted to. So they didn't dissuade me from doing art. But I can track down the point where I decided that I wanted to do science fiction and fantasy artwork to a single event. And that's, as a kid, I'd take piano lessons. My dad would take me into town to take piano lessons. And after the lesson, we would go to a cigar store that also had bookshelves and magazines. And I'd look at the creepy and eerie magazines and the various comic books they had there. But I also would go to the books, the shelves of paperback books, and look at those. And I remember one time I went there and I saw the Lancer edition of Conan the Adventurer with the Frank Frazetta cover, the classic Conan standing there, hands on his sword hilt, with the woman draped on his leg. And I took one look at that and went, that's what I want to do. So everything after that was trying to get to that sort of a level. That started my career.
Right.
Yeah, and I was like 7, 8, 9, something like that.
So, so then you were self-taught. You didn't go to a school.
Right. I took art courses in college, but they didn't really teach me what I wanted to know. I wanted to be an illustrator, and the college courses were geared towards making me a gallery painter or something.
Right.
And that's not what I wanted to be. I wanted to be an illustrator. I wanted to do the cover to the Conan novels and stuff like that.
So, but you started, well, did you start with pen and ink? And
started with pencil.
Pencil.
I mean, I would, as a little kid, I'd get rolls of butcher paper and do these battle scenes of warriors running and blah blah blah, and it was just simple, oval parts for arms and legs and stuff like that. But it was fun. I developed the hand-eye coordination and stuff like that there. And what did I do in high school? I guess I drew pictures in the corners of papers and stuff like that. I didn't do any big pieces of art, I don't think. That came in college, pretty much. And
so what did you go to college for then?
I did my 4 years. It was the thing to do, to go to college. And it served as sort of a buffer zone between school and real life.
Right.
And in college, I did stuff like, Star Wars came out during my time in college. And so I did pencil sketches of the Star Wars characters from the publicity stills. And, photorealistic, shaded pencil pieces of them. And worked out pretty well. And they got published in a little local rag there in San Marcos, and tried to do some paintings and stuff like that. And I was working with traditional media there.
Right. So, when did you actually So I read somewhere that you were working in a photo shop, and
Yes.
then on the side you were doing paintings or sketches.
Yeah, well, for a few months I worked at a photo studio in the darkroom, printing photographs in Houston, and it was just the first job I got out of college, and the only notable thing about that job was I think I actually handled negatives that had been on the moon.
Ooh.
Yeah, because NASA occasionally would send over photographs to be printed, and so I was printing photos of the lunar surface taken from the lunar surface, and I'm going, are these the actual negatives? I don't know, but that's really cool. So that was the only notable thing about that job. But during that time, I was invited by friends of mine that I'd made in college to Austin to go to an SCA event hosted by the Baron at the time, who was Steve Jackson. And so I went, and they had a feast and the whole thing, and I showed Steve Jackson a painting I had been working on.
Steve Jackson of Steve Jackson Games.
Steve Jackson Games,
right,
yes.
Okay.
And he liked it and wanted it for the cover to the Space Gamer magazine. And I said, okay, and that was my first professional sale.
Right. So from then on, so you've got pen and ink and pencil and painting so far.
Yeah.
We haven't hit the digital age yet.
Right.
Okay.
In college, I did some very primitive digital art, some text-based stuff, and we had an Apple IIe, I think, at some point, and so I would graph out little bits of graphics there and try and plug it in and have it show up on the screen. Very primitive, but I can also point to the specific photos that got me interested in computer graphics. This was way back when Space Odyssey, in 2001, A Space Odyssey, was in first release.
Right.
And my mother, we took the train to Chicago and saw the movie, and my mind was blown. I thought, oh, this is awesome. We also got a copy of Scientific American. And in that copy of Scientific American was an article on computer graphics and how it was developing. And there was this interlocking, there was the shape of interlocking rectangles. And it was computer generated and shaded and colored. And I went, whoa, that is so cool. And I was fascinated by computer graphics from then on. So it was an article in Scientific American that got me hooked on computer graphics.
Right. So then when did you grab a computer and start doing that kind of stuff?
Pretty much as soon as I could, which was in college when computers were available for me to grab onto. I mean, the next time I did computer graphics after college was the Macintosh, the Mac Plus, which was a little beige box about that big.
Right. And
did black and white and just two colors, and you could dither to get grays. And I churned out graphics on that, pictures that, you could actually paint with it. It was, at least in dithered black and white. It was pretty cool.
So then, was that the lead-in to Steve Jackson bought this dragon of yours?
Yeah.
And then you said, well, I have also been playing with computer graphics, and did that get you into making?
No. What happened there is, and that was the demon painting, by the way, the red demon coming out of the pentagram, which I think was used for an Ultima cover.
Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ultima.
I'm not an Ultima person.
A Calibeth.
It
was the cover for. It was the re-release of a Calibeth. They had that cover.
Right.
So, and he purchased that from Steve Jackson, though there is some controversy on that issue. Now, what was the question again?
I want to know how you stepped into making
computer graphics
and your game art career.
Well, I worked for Steve Jackson for like several years doing magazine illustrations for Space Gamer and Fantasy Gamer, and doing occasional graphics for Steve Jackson Games itself. And I did a load of cardboard heroes. But those were all done in traditional media. Pen, ink, I'd pencil things out. I'd ink them usually with technical pens. Not the best idea I ever had. And then color them with Dr. Martin's dyes, which turned out really nice, but also not exactly the best idea I ever had. The light fastness of the medium is not that awesome.
Oh, wow.
But and going to conventions during that period, I learned more about how to use traditional media. I'd talked to various artists I met at conventions, Don Punchance and other artists, and saying, how do you do, what do you paint on? How do you use I'm painting with acrylics. Is there something I need to know? And I eventually got to, I know that one of the artists painted on drafting film. It was translucent drafting film.
Right, I know.
And it was really cool because then I could do my sketch on whatever paper I wanted to, lay the drafting film over it, and paint directly on it, and still have the sketch, which was really cool.
So like layers in today's digital stuff.
Yes, exactly.
Primitive.
Exactly. Wow. And when I was working at Steve Jackson Games, we were doing, I would do a lot of the artist paste up stuff, where you cut out the thing, run it through a machine, it puts a thin layer of wax on the back, and you paste it up on it. And you just stick it onto a piece of paper. And it was like, it's primitive, which is really bad when you're working with technical pens, because the moment your technical pen touches the wax, clogs.
Right.
So it's like, ouch. But while I was working at Steve Jackson Games, Richard Garriott came by, because Richard Garriott was in the SCA and knew Steve Jackson because he had been the Baron. Right. And so knew he ran a game company. And so Richard came by to show off Ultima 1, the game he was working on. And when he saw the artwork I was doing for Steve, he said, "Ooh, can I have a piece of that?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Sure." And so he set me up right then, when he was in the middle of the visit, he set me up with an Apple IIe, a television screen, and an Apple II graphics tablet. I've never seen an Apple II graphics tablet since, but it was an official Apple II graphics tablet. It was metal, which struck me as odd, but it was metal, and there was a thin wire that connected the stylus to it, and the stylus was this metal barreled pen that rattled and used it. And I did the startup screen for Ultima 1. I think it's a lion rampant, right? It's this heraldic lion. Uh-huh. And the cool thing, I guess he had some drawing software on or painting software on the Apple IIe, and so I could trace off this lion. And the cool part was it was plugged into the household current, which was not clean, and so every little power spike that came through the plug showed up as a actual spike on the line I was drawing.
Oh no!
So you'd get these little jagged spikes occasionally. I'd have to erase and then go back over and hope not another spike happened while I was repairing the line. But we finally got that thing down, and that was cool. And he commissioned me to do the cover of the guy on horseback and the dragon in the background. And I did that one. Wow. That one was done on, I think, it was before I went to drafting film. That was done on illustration board, I think, with acrylic, a mixture of acrylics and Dr. Martin's dyes. not the best decision.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you would talk to other artists and find out how they did things.
Yeah.
And so you were getting support from other artists.
Yeah, either knowingly or unknowingly. I mean, I would grab I got Frazetta posters, and I got those posters specifically so I could get right down and study the weave of the canvas.
Right.
And from that, I could tell, oh, he laid this color down first, and then laid this color down on top of it, and then lightly brushed this color on top of that.
Right.
And I could see how he worked from dark to light and stuff like that, and I would emulate that as best I could, because it seemed like a great way to do it. And working from dark to light makes your lights seem luminous. If you work the other way, things get muddy. And so I learned that. And so I learned from other artists how they solved the problems they ran up against.
But you invented the tech pen and the dyes from what you had on hand before. I mean, you came up with that on your own?
Oh, the style?
The way you did it originally, you invented that to meet your needs? Or did you read about it somewhere?
Well, I didn't invent those tools, but I mean, I came up with the style I was using. Yeah, I wanted the pictures for like the Ultima manuals to look period, to look kind of old, and so I went with that fine line thing because it kind of looked, old style engraving-ish sort of look to it.
That's the style I recognize of yours is the lines.
Yeah,
so that wasn't an established style that you learned. It was just that's how you developed to make, because it's fairly unique to you, I think.
Well, I was an avid comics collector. Well, I would collect the comics of artists that I liked, and one of the artists I liked was oh God, I can't remember his name. Williamson. Not Hal Williamson. Anyway, he did a version of Frankenstein, which used a technique very much like that, but the lines were finer and it looked very period. And I went, oh, that's really great. I'll use that. It was only later I found out that he was emulating another earlier artist named Franklin Booth. Whose pen work looked like engravings, and if you get a chance, check out his artwork. It's awesome. He gets so atmospheric with his pen work and stuff. But and so unbeknownst to me, I was emulating a style that was
So you did
established way earlier.
Right. So that was your foot in the door, and you then got tapped for doing mostly all of the Ultima work.
Yeah, the Ultima covers and stuff like. He liked what I did for him, and so we kept going. Each cover would be a commission.
Right. And so you mostly did those. I've seen the paintings in Portalarium, and so you physically did those, and they did prints of your artwork.
Right.
So when did it happen that you started working in digital rather than physical?
Okay. I'd been playing with digital on
since the
Macintosh Plus, right? And I played with it, but I didn't do anything serious. I think during my years, after I quit Steve Jackson Games, I went freelance and was doing work for Hero Games and Iron Crown Enterprises and various other companies. And that's when I developed my style of painting on Herculean drafting film and all that stuff. And what was the question again?
When did you sort of transition from doing paper to digital?
Right. I did commission work for Richard for the covers and for the manual illustrations for years until Ultima 5, when I was sitting at my home studio going, oh, what am I going to do? Should I do comics? I did the Marvel tryout book, and I sent a sample to Marvel, and they sent back a reply saying, here, ink these pages now. We're intrigued. Ink these pages. And I was going, oh, do I really want to do that? Because comics work is like way too much labor for way too little pay, right? Do I want to do that? I'm considering this, career change. And Richard calls up and says, do you want to come work for us? We're moving our offices to Austin, Texas. And I thought about it for a quarter of a second and said, yes. And so that was my hiring
that's a good interview.
Yeah, that's a great interview. I was the first artist hired at Steve Jackson Games. I was the first artist hired at Origin Systems. And they were unsure whether I would have enough to do at Origin Systems. They go, all the other artists are doing their own stuff. I mean, all the other programmers are doing their own art and stuff. We don't know if there'll be enough for you to do. But after the first week, all the programmers saw what I was doing for Ultima and went, oh, we want some of that too. So I was booked.
Awesome.
Solid after that. And, went looking for other artists and got other artists like Glenn Johnson and Jeff D and stuff that worked for us. So that's cool.
Awesome.
But that's when I Ultima 5 was when I started working professionally in computer graphics.
Right.
We were working, I think by that time, we were working in Deluxe Paint, or did that come later? I think it was Deluxe Paint, and we'd work on an Apple. God, what did we work on? Oh, I can't remember. I looked it up one time.
Could it have been Amiga?
No, not an Amiga, strangely enough. I never really got to work with an Amiga, which was supposedly at that period the graphics powerhouse.
Right, I'm shocked.
But, I worked on Commodore 64 and 128 with a Koala pad, doing graphics for Times of Lore. Worked on the Apple. I'm not sure they had a graphics package sufficient for working on an Apple IIe directly. We'd work on I cannot remember the name of the computer I used, but anyway, it had Deluxe Paint and so from EA, and so we actually got to paint with 256 colors in many cases. But in most cases, we're limited to more like 8 colors.
Right.
And I was proud of the stuff I did for the. I worked mostly on the Apple II versions, and so that was the art I mostly did. And so I had, their high-res graphics had 4 colors, 8 colors, something like that. Anyway. But I'm proud of the fact that I got some neat imagery out of there. There were some scenes I did, nighttime scenes, where I worked in blue and white,
right,
and it looked like the nighttime. And you'd have a fire in the middle, and I'd work with white and orange. I would have killed for yellow, but it worked with white and orange pixels in there.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thing was, we were working on a television set, and not a monitor, right? We're working on a television set where a bright white pixel would cast a shadow on the wall behind you, right?
Right.
And so those white pixels would blur out a little bit too because they're so bright, right? And so they kind of blended themselves. I didn't have to do any work in that area, and so they would glow from the screen and it looked great. First time I tried a high-resolution monitor, I was so unimpressed because it was like, oh, this is dull. The white is just white. There's no glow. You mean I have to make it glow? I have to actually paint in the glow around the thing. So that took me a while to get used to.
Right. So that sort of began the digital age.
Yeah.
But now mostly you work in digital, right?
Yeah. That started my painting with pixels. 3D started when I started working on, what's it, Wing Commander 2. They wanted me to do some 3D ships, and Chris Roberts picked out the software package, which was a 3D Studio, DOS. And so I worked with that to build spaceships and stuff like that for Wing Commander 2. And how I learned that was just, I'd try and do something and go, okay, everybody working in 3D is going to want to do this thing that I want to do. There's no way around that. So there must be a way to do it. And I'd go into the manual and I'd look around and I'd figure out finally what they would call it. And then I could read up on it and go, oh, okay, that's how it's done. And so it was basically when I needed a tool to do something, I'd look in there thinking it's got to be in here. And it was. And that's how I learned it. And so that's how I learned to work in 3D.
Right. Wow.
And so, yeah.
So did that lead to, what do you do most of your work in these days?
These days, I'm doing most of my work in Painter, Photoshop, that's Corel Painter, Photoshop, 3D Studio Max, and now I'm starting to get a little bit comfortable with ZBrush, which is, it's got such an arcane interface that I have to forget everything I learned from other 3D programs to work with it. But it does amazing stuff.
Right. So you prefer digital over the old-fashioned way?
Well, the reason I went to digital, my reasoning behind it, I don't know if this is the actual truth, but the reasoning I used to get away from traditional media is that I don't need to be playing around with phthalocyanine blue and cadmium red light. I don't need to be going around playing with heavy metals.
Right.
And I used a lot of airbrush. I don't need to be breathing that shit. I mean, I wear a mask, but still,
right.
I have to lick the tip of the brush, and that's just not to get a good point, and that's not cool when you're working with some of those chemicals. And so it's like, so I said media. So I said digital. Rather than poison myself, I'll blast my face with radiation. That's fine.
Yeah.
And then we got high resolution monitors and flat screen monitors, and you don't have to worry about that anymore.
Right.
Yeah, one of the big problems we're working with digital in the early days was the monitor. Oh my God, those things were heavy.
I remember.
Breaking. Yeah.
So I'm from the Shroud of the Avatar community.
Yeah.
And I know that you had some early dealings with the concept art.
Uh-huh.
You and Scott Jones worked on some early concept art. How do you feel about the direction the game has taken away from the sort of steampunk
Yes,
feel
it was very steampunk.
to more medieval now? And do you have any involvement with the current or future artwork?
Yeah, I understand the reasoning behind that. I mean, I feel that the popularity of fantasy role playing is due to the familiarity of fantasy role playing. I mean, it's been around so long since D&D time that it's like it's all shorthand. I'm a wizard. Okay, you know everything about your character at this point, pretty much, right?
Right.
So you can instantly get into it. You know what your part to play is and everything. So that's why I think that fantasy role-playing is so popular, is because there's instant recognition of everything you have to do. And so I understand that a steampunk milieu would have been confusing for many people.
Right.
And it would have limited the market of Shroud of the Avatar. At least that's my thinking. And so I understand their decision to go more towards, traditional medieval. But they're working some of that steampunk influence back into the game a little bit, which I applaud, because it needs something to give it a different slant, something to stand out.
Right. There's a few items here and there, but mostly it's medieval. So you said when you say I'm a wizard, everybody knows exactly what that is.
Yeah.
Does your artwork work like that, where someone says I need you to draw a wizard? You said, well, I've done this 1,000 times before. I know right where to start, and you can bust it out really easy.
Yes, and that's a blessing and a curse, because it's like, I tried to do. I want to do fantasy and science fiction artwork, and so it's hard to come up with a new twist on a wizard. But you kind of want to do that because you want to stand out somehow. You want to show some originality, and I feel that a lot of the characters and stuff I drew were designed specifically to be generic, and that's kind of a shame. But I did get to do 100 wizards and 100 warriors and 100 things for projects like Cardboard Heroes, and explore a lot of different costumes and things like that, working on those projects. So I have a pretty good idea.
Right. So you have a website called Draw My Character.
Yes.
And people tell you the details. I want a wizard wearing these clothes, and he's got these features.
Right.
So that helps.
Yes. I'm still being art directed by my fans. Yay! But no, that's what it's for.
Right.
I'm sure people get excited about. Yes, you can get your character drawn by a professional game artist. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure they appreciate that. It's strange. I haven't had in Draw My Character. I haven't had too many people ask for trademark characters. It's It's strange. I haven't drawn any Batman or Superman or anything like that yet.
Well, let me ask: can you do that? Can if someone says I want a Batman, can you do that?
Apparently, I researched into that because I was going, how do you get around that? And I looked at a site called drawmycommission.com or comicscommission.com, and it was basically a clearinghouse for fan artists to draw trademark characters. I'm going, how does this possibly exist? And so I researched this, and I came up with the thing that appears to be the case is you can draw a one-off Batman and sell it to somebody, and nobody's going to hassle you.
Right.
Soon as you take that and stick it in a copying machine,
right,
that's when the lawyers perk up
right.
and get interested.
So if you made me a Batman to hang on my wall, that would be cool. But if I started printing posters,
then you'd have a problem. Then trying and making money off the prints of that thing.
DC would come and break my knees.
Right.
Okay.
Now, what this means for digital distribution, I don't know exactly. I'm crossing my fingers, hoping nothing bad happens.
Well, I have, everybody that I've run into in the Shroud of the Avatar has imagined their own hero, their own self, and so I can see where it would be not the trademark characters. Mm-hmm. So, let's see.
But I have drawn a few. A person wanted Deja Thoris, and no, I think that's the only one. There was a guy who did a Star Wars character,
right?
But it wasn't an actual one of the it was his own role playing game character that takes place in Star Wars. So It wasn't an actual Star Wars character, but it was an actual Star Wars alien,
right?
In the Rebel fighter pilot outfit.
That's great,
and that was fun because I got to use research material.
Do you have a favorite kind of character you like to draw, like aliens or thieves or mages or warriors?
Well, partial to elves, but and when I was doing way back in the day, I would do character drawings for people at conventions, and it seemed that the two big popular characters were elves and dwarves. specifically female elves, and specifically revealing armor.
Yes.
So, and I couldn't argue with that. I enjoyed drawing that. So that was fun. Strangely enough, in Draw My Character, I haven't had much in the way of scantily clad characters. They're mostly pretty...
Say realistic?
Realistic characters. Which cool.
I think the world is changing, and that there's less of the sexualized stuff and more of the, I want something that's legitimate armor and not the chainmail bikini.
Right.
So
it's very different now. That's very nice.
I'm actually glad to hear that, yeah. So, let's see, did I ask? Where are you going? Which, do you know, are you doing any games that I've heard of? Underworld Ascendant? Or?
Well, I'm not scheduled yet, but they insist that I'll be doing more artwork for. Apparently, there's going to be more Blade of the Avatar novelization, so they want me to do more of that. And there's Ultima Ascension wants me to do a cover for a special edition of their game. And that's cool. That's cool. I can do that. And then, but what I'm trying to do is kind of get out of the not exactly get out of the game industry, but change who I work for. And so I've got a Patreon campaign where I'm trying to do work directly for my fans. I held a big vote where I asked people, hey, send in your ideas for what you want my next project to be. And then once I compiled a list of all that, I said, now vote on which one you want me to do. And it came out that I'm going to do a cover for Ultima 7 that never was.
Right.
You know, Ultima 7 was the Black Gate, and it was a black cover. It was high concept.
Right.
And I'm going, well, what would I have painted if it hadn't been that high concept black cover? If they had actually done a cover like the other Ultimas, what would that have looked like? And so I'm doing that.
Right.
And so that's fun.
So you have Draw My Character, and you have the Patreon. I'm aware of, and you're also branching off into 3D printing.
Yes. Recently. I doubt you can see this on the camera, but it's an ankh.
I will try to move it to the
metal ankh, done from an early Ultima manual illustration that I did way back in the day.
Is that going to show up?
Kind of blurry and weird, but
yeah, blurry and weird, but we've got it.
Yeah, but it's metal. It's kind of a colored steel. And
I apologize to the audience.
I'll have it up on Shapeways.
Maybe I can get a screenshot or a photo of that.
Yeah.
And
insert.
Yeah.
Insert over with voiceover. Yeah.
So, so there were some questions for the community, and I want it from the community. I want to see if I've tagged them all, and that's back over there.
Take a look at them.
Okay.
You know, as a weird little aside, working in the game industry from as early as I did, you had this strange back and forth on storage media and distribution media. At first, it was the floppy disks, but luckily, which didn't hold much data. But luckily, we couldn't produce much art. There was, artwork was, tedious pixel editing and stuff, and so we'd do that, and we'd put those in the, on the floppies, and they'd go out to people. Soon as we got stuff like, as soon as we got the 3D stuff 3D Studio Max, all of a sudden we could produce far more art and animation than they could put on the discs. It was, you'd have to back up with a truck to load disc 82,
Right.
And so, yay, we were riding on the top at that point as artists, because we're going, we can easily produce enough art to fill what you want, right? And then CDs came out, and all of a sudden the balance went back to, no, now we got to work hard to fill those discs with animations and stuff like that.
Right.
And then DVDs came out, and then streaming, and it's like, okay, you win. We'll produce however much art we can in the time you give us. Yeah.
Right. Awesome. Okay, so one of the questions from the community was, out of all the Ultima stuff you've done, what are your favorite illustrations that you've done?
Pretty much my favorite illustrations were just the stuff that I thought worked the best. I thought the cover to Ultima 6 was the simplest, most iconic, most coherent cover I'd done. I really liked that one. The lighting was good, the layout was good, and that was pretty much art directed by Richard.
Right.
And he had a good eye and for that one, and that was great. The cover to Ultima Underworld, the guy coming down the staircase, I think that might have been Ultima Underworld 2, guy coming down the staircase, that one was nice because it had that kind of theatrical lighting from the guy's torch, and yet everywhere around him was darkness and stuff. Right. And that looked really nice. I thought that one worked really well. Ultima 9, it was okay, but a little too technical. And that was the first cover I did for an Ultima that was, I think, strictly CG. Though I think Ultima 8 cover was CG. I actually built the pagan symbol in 3D. And so that was a render, and the fiery background was done in Painter.
Right.
So, yeah. But and some of the black and white pieces, the librarian at the magic shop or something, the little wizened old man at his desk with scrolls and stuff in the shelves behind him.
Right.
That one worked out really well. Some of the stuff I did is just embarrassing, but
should I ask about those?
Oh, sure, you can ask about those. What were you thinking when you did this monstrosity?
Let me ask it like this: are there some drawings that if you could do over, you would?
Oh, hell yes, many.
Just tell us about a couple.
Oh boy. Well, the early illustrations I did for the Ultima manuals, just the proportions on the characters were wrong. I tended to draw super skinny people, and apparently I could only draw one hairstyle, which was basically mine.
Yes.
And so, lame. And so I'm trying to break out of those things. And it just it's me figuring out stuff.
Right.
Embarrassing things. But then some of the stuff turned out really nice. I like I did a picture of the Avatar from a low angle walking into a town, and there's people standing around, stuff like that. I thought that one turned out really nice. The pen work was simple, straightforward, told the story. I'm finding more and more the key decisions in making a good piece of art is figuring out what to leave out.
Right.
And leave out all that you can and still get the picture, and that's the thing you want.
Right. Wow. So I'll have to find some of those and insert them.
Yeah.
Okay, so another question is, you've made a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But are there other artists' work that you kind of wish you had done something like that?
Not sure.
Frazetta, for instance, like Conan. Wow, I wish I had done that Conan. Or
Oh God, there's artists. Well, I mean, there's numerous artists that. Oh gosh, I wish I could do work as good as theirs. Right. I mean, Frazetta, Mike Mignola, innumerable artists. Those are the two that I use as my models right now. Is there pieces of art in the games I've done that I wish I had done rather than someone else?
Sure.
Yeah, but I would be remiss in pointing those out.
Oh, okay. You know? Yeah, that's fair.
Because of course, being a perfectionist, which tends to make me take a long time on each piece of art, I couldn't have done everything, but I wanted to do everything.
Right.
I of course have my own opinions on what everything should look like.
Right.
And I would have liked to have done everything, but there's no way I could possibly have done that.
Right. So, yeah, let me scroll down and see what a couple more questions were. I'm not a professional at this.
Yeah.
I wish I had a teleprompter. Draw My Character is currently down. Is it going to come back up? Or
well, it's in hiatus. I'm trying to get my Draw My Character, I'm trying to get my Patreon to a point where I can support myself on that. And once I do that, I can stop trying to market myself at every turn, because that takes so much time and work just on art.
Right.
But right now I'm social media. I'm in social media hell, and it's like it takes hours and hours, and it's
right.
Like, oh man. So and I squeeze the art in between the bouts of social media.
Right.
So that's what I'm doing right now. Once I'm comfortable with the amount of people I have in my Patreon, then I can relax and do art and experiment with new things.
Right.
And stuff.
Okay, so there's a question we touched on, but we didn't really hit this part. How was the transition to digital for you, and are you comfortable with digital now?
Oh yeah, I love digital. For a while it was, I did the manual illustrations for Ultima 9 digitally, and that was it was a learning experience. Obviously, arguably I didn't do the best there. The issue was I was working on a graphics tablet. Graphics tablet is a great thing, and it speeds you up enormously, but you can't see what you're doing. You can't say, if I start my line here, it will end here, like you can if you're drawing on paper. And so it's like I had to align my graphics tablet to my monitor as closely as possible, and I'd be drawing the same line, 5 times. Oh, undo, draw it again, undo, draw it again, undo, to get it to end exactly where I wanted and stuff like that. And so that was the limitation I was working under doing the illustrations for Ultima 9. I couldn't be precise, and it was really annoying. I then later got to get my hands on a Cintiq graphics tablet, which actually has the monitor as the graphics tablet. Suddenly, I can draw a line, and I know exactly where it's going to end, and I can draw it that way. And it's like, oh, there. And so I did the illustrations for Blade of the Avatar that way,
right? And
that worked out a lot better, I think. The illustrations for Ultima 9, though they looked pretty nice. There were some crude lines in there and stuff like that. I mean, if I could do them again in my own style and not relying on their parallel line tools and stuff,
right?
I might do that.
Okay, so I've covered all the questions and all of my questions. But is there something? Are there any stories you want to tell?
Oh boy. Okay. One story from early origin is, I have a temper with objects. Not so much with people, but with objects.
Like mice?
Mice, keyboards, computers that don't do what I want them to do. And there would be streams of invective, and I've gone through a keyboard or two. Not proud of that. If I had a little slider I could move in my brain and fix that part of me, I'd move it. But it was not unknown at the office. And so I was working down the hall, and I was stationed near the musicians and the sound people. And one guy came up with a prank, and so he got some sound effect files of shattering glass. And so we sat in my office, and he said, "Okay, 1, 2, 3." And I'd go, "Damn it, all to hell!" And then he played the shattering glass sound, smash. And then we waited, and Dallas Snell, who I think you met at Portalarium,
Yes, know him well.
suddenly materialized in the doorway, having run down the length of the hallway, panting, looking into the room, wide-eyed. And we cruelly laughed at him. Yes, that was...
How many times did you do that to Dallas before?
Once.
Yeah.
Once. It would only work once.
Oh my.
We didn't belabor the point, but yeah.
Wow. I think a lot of gamers, I've broken joysticks and mice and keyboards in my day, and I just play the games. I don't make them.
Right.
So, well, that's cool. All right, so I have, hiding in the room over there, I have one of our other community leaders, Rustic Dragon, Vitralis the Blue, Joseph Toschlog, and he had a couple of questions that he wanted to ask, so I'm going to move and let him ask those.
All right.
So how serious do I have to be?
You don't have to be serious at all.
All right.
No.
You have to be on camera.
Were you guys having fun?
No, it was grueling.
Okay, well, I could see that.
Torture.
All right. So if you may bear with me.
So ask your questions, Bridgekeeper.
Wow, this is
I don't know.
very
Should I
warm
just sit
man,
with them and
Frank.
listen?
Yes.
I'll be Dennis's Ed Sullivan.
Yes. Be my auxiliary memory.
All right. Allow me to bring up my questions here.
We should introduce people at first. This is Scott Jones.
Hello, how are you doing? I'm another artist that worked with Dennis for years and years and years at Origin. I'm not
Yep.
the old dog he is, but I'm up there now.
And you're now at Portalarium.
And I'm not Portalarium. That's right. Working on Shroud of the Avatar.
Oh no, it's kind
Am I in there? Here, let me see. Oh, there we go. Here, I can. Oh, I love you, Dennis.
Now here's a question though: Are the steampunkish concept pictures we did for Portalarium? Does everybody know where to find those?
Well, they've not been made publicly available yet, although I did just recently post a teaser showing the inner Emporium shot that includes one of the figures you did, the fellow in the top hat with the cane, and then a bunch of the other interior stuff that I made too as we tried to create those scenes. And I said, hey, look, this is... Because there were huge questions going, a flurry of them going around the forums about what were those weird concept drawings that we saw behind Richard during the early days? And so I'm like, well, and so many people wanted to know. And I guess just Richard just never bothered to... I don't think he necessarily is haunting the forums in the way that a lot of us are. And so I said, well, here's the deal. And I gave them kind of the story behind it, how you and I worked for like 9 months on that stuff at my house.
Yes.
We actually worked in my little office in there back then when Portalarium still was in its earlier stages.
They had their offices downtown.
Yeah, they were downtown in a small little cramped thing up a long flight of stairs.
So post boat.
Post-boat, but pre-larger offices. and also pre-Shroud of the Avatar, because at the time there was no such word for it. It was the ultimate RPG, is what Richard was talking about it as. He was revealing nothing, and in fact, at the time, and this kind of was kind of amusing and terrifying, is that he didn't even reveal to Dallas what we were doing, other than the fact that he was having us work on concept stuff for a game that Richard wanted to be completely hush-hush.
Right.
So we did that work for like 9 months, and then we didn't hear. Then they put the kibosh on it because we actually got to the point where Dennis and I started saying, okay, well, we've done all these things, and what's left to do really right now, except for, okay, well, let's do some exterior buildings. Well, what good is that going to be unless we can put them in situ? And we knew at that point that we're going to be using, or that Richard wanted to use the Unity engine.
Yeah.
And so we ended up taking the Unity engine, and then Dennis crafted the exteriors of these buildings that I kind of fancifully rendered the interiors of. And then I worked with him on like texture mapping and such, and then we put it inside the Unity engine and actually made an entire area sutured together with like the cool platforms you were making, right? In the, what was it, like Art Nouveau?
Weird. Yeah, Art Nouveau style houses with round windows. Yeah. The round windows were Scott's idea.
Because they had to be different, unique.
Cool.
Well, and a lot of the stuff was, it hailed back to the days when Tabula Rasa was being worked on. Richard really wanted to capture some Art Nouveau style stuff there, but all that ended up changing once the collaboration with the Koreans made him go in the direction of the Tabula Rasa that actually shipped, which was much more of a militaristic sort of Space Marines battling aliens kind of thing. So prior to that, though, there was much more of the soft, weird, cool Art Nouveau mixed with Art Deco stuff. Like not Alma Tadema. What am I thinking of? Who is the fellow that did a lot of the art?
Oh, I'm blanking on the name.
I keep wanting to say Chihuly, but that's the glass.
No,
that's the glass artist guy. Muka, Alphonse Muka.
That's it.
And so Dennis and I went back to that as references for what Dennis was creating for some of the exterior stuff. He'd done some exterior concept drawings even of like, some of the same things that later were to appear in Shroud of the Avatar, and that included like things like, there'll eventually be dams and hydroelectric and geothermal.
And let me tell you, architecture, not my strong suit.
No, but you did.
I did it.
You did good. I mean, that wasn't. You wanted to break away from doing just the figures anyway, because you were worried that like, God, I'm really not contributing a lot of.
Well, my character will be an architect, and I want you to show him in situ with all of the things that he's built, and
all the things. But those were some cool, concepts. So we took that and then rolled with it, and so 9 months of that, all the way up to the point we started making Unity scenes that you could run around in. That's when Dallas was like, "Okay, you got to stop. It's being cart before the horse at this point, because we don't even have other designers to start working on this to know that you're going in a direction we can actually use."
Right.
So knowing that, we had to put a halt on it, and then it was like another year and a half or something before they did the Kickstarter.
And then it was all medieval.
And then it was all medieval.
Oh, okay.
And both of us were like, why?
It was kind of sad.
But what you're seeing now is you're seeing a lot of that stuff that you and I
sneaking back in,
starting to sneak back into the project. Because at first they were sure that no one wanted to buy a steampunk game, and that may have been true. But then when I started showing off those images to folks here and there in secret, they were like, "Wow, how come we all didn't do this?" I'm like, "Because we didn't think you all would buy it."
Well, I think maybe initial investors didn't think anyone would buy it.
And that could be more.
And then the fans wanted Garrett's vision.
Yes.
Yeah, it would definitely be a risk.
It would, yes. It could be a risk. Because for a lot of reasons, by the way, this is something that's important to note, and that is that because we are on sort of a budget, I mean, we don't have the kind of money that...
I'm not sure if I was allowed to say that.
Yeah, you don't have the money that, like... Space Citizen?
So Star Citizen. Yeah, we don't have Star Citizen funds. We have limited funds, and it may seem like whatever we're up to at this point, 7 million, may be a lot of money. But in truth, when you have like 30 people on staff at a constant burn rate, trying to get as much done as possible, there are limits to what our time can get, and it means that we really do have to depend on stuff that comes from like the Unity store. And when you're dealing with a fantasy game, there really are hardly any steampunk offerings, and so if we want that, we have to hand make those ourselves. Everything else we have to depend on, pulling in from outside sources, which really are more generically fantasy.
Are also using fan art and stuff?
Oh yeah. So for a while, the fans were doing some stuff for us too, and although those are in, we had to trickle down on that as well because the overhead of trying to manage that process became very difficult.
Right.
Unless we could find a way to easily bring in that fan art and then vet it and then change it if we needed to, and then fix texture maps, fix resolutions, fix all the data.
Put all our custom shaders on it.
Yes. By the time you did that, it was cheaper to make it in-house.
Yourself, yeah.
At that point, we might as well just take fan art drawings and then build it ourselves.
Right.
Which, we might still be able to do, but,
yeah.
That assumes that the fans who wanted to build the objects are equally as competent sketch artists that could actually fulfill what we needed to, know before we built it ourselves. So, anyway, it was all that stuff, too. And it's all still out there. And to answer your original question, all of our artwork is available, and I'm going to be talking with Richard soon about me starting to post it on maybe the internal Shroud forums, either Dev Plus or one of the other areas on it, so everyone can look at it and see some of the original art that Dennis and I worked on that may be eventually making its way into the Shroud of the Avatar game once it's been vetted by the upper management and we know we need it.
I should put that up on my... I'm not sure if I have that on my website.
Well, the stuff that you did for the Shroud stuff?
Yeah.
Well, and at this point, I don't think it's an issue. I don't think it's an issue. But we can ask Richard, because I wouldn't mind kind of putting the stuff up that I did as well and saying, hey, guess what? This was conceptual work for early work for what later became Shroud, and slowly but surely some of it's being reincorporated into the final game. The only thing that we should be careful of is to make sure that if there's anything in our stuff that we did that are actual spoilers that they don't want out yet, then we may have to wait on that. But that's for them to decide.
Right.
Sorry, I just blah 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 a huge section of.
I'm sure the audience will love it.
Hi, I'm Scott Jones. Let me tell you everything.
All of a sudden.
Sorry about that. This is essentially your review.
That's all right.
Yeah, I think we were introducing ourselves.
Yes. I said, let's introduce ourselves.
And that is me, Blort.
But let me tell you the backstory.
Good Lord.
This is why sometimes when Scott Jones calls me, I don't answer. Because I know, I've got 15 minutes.
Oh, this is going to take a while.
I'm going to roll the dice. Or, hi, Scotty. I've got 15 minutes. Can you do that?
No, come on, look. I'm not verbose or long-winded at all.
No.
I don't know what you're talking about.
But I do call Scott Jones back at first availability because it's good for the soul.
So ask your questions quick.
Oh, so I'm Joseph Toschlog, also known as Rustic Dragon, proprietor, creator, and other words of the Hearth of Britannia, fan website and cookbook project for the Ultima series, former Portalarium employee in community relations and web development, user experience person extraordinaire. So I've brought some fun questions for Dennis.
Oh boy.
Dennis is my favorite artist of all time.
Whoa!
Edging out Goya just ever so slightly from when I was in high school. But I'm a bit of an artist myself. I've spent a lot of time using your particular Ultima manual illustration style as kind of a way to refine my own technique. I've always defined your pen and ink Ultima manual illustration styles as a very stylized form of like a pseudo cross contour banding. It's like the lines are sort of like that, but not. It's what I like to define as is the hindline of cross contour banding, meaning you use just enough to get the point across. You are not verbose with your lines.
I try not to be.
And so it's a good, looking at your artwork has always been a really good study in efficiency.
Oh, well, thank you.
But about that particular style, I've looked at it through the years. It's really fun to look at that. As a real privilege for me working at Portalarium was I got to take your Blade of the Avatar images and then put them into the Blade of the Avatar layout. I got to do that layout. Right. So I was among the first to see them, and I got to notice things about them. that that has led me to a few questions. So back in the day,
Yeah.
back in the early Ultima days, where everything was physical media,
Right.
it was very obvious that it was black on white. And
Yes.
then at some point, I've seen some circa Ultima 8, Ultima 9, where I go, this has to be white on black. There's no way that you did this as black on white.
Right.
And then now, in the Blade of the Avatar days, I've seen some illustrations that are, this is obviously black on white, this is white on black. And the only answer to that is it has to be digital.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious if you could talk about the evolution of that style, from physical media all the way up to digital, and I'm curious the tools you've used, both physical and digital.
Right. Well, traditionally, if you want to do white on black, you'd go to scratchboard. The scratchboard paper is expensive because it's got a very thin film of I think clay or something, some
some kind of dark clay or dark material.
Some clay on it. So you can it's white paper. It's white, but you can then ink it.
Mm-hmm.
Do your black ink on white drawing, and then if you want to cut into that with white, you take an X-Acto knife and cut in white details,
I think
and you can get amazingly luminous looking effects.
Yeah, I think I've
working
done that.
that way.
With linoleum. I think
Right.
Something.
The
like
thing
that.
is, the paper's expensive, and the technique is exacting. So when I went to digital, yes, there's all of a sudden undo and drawing with white on black, and that freed up a lot. I mean, I could do my black on white on one layer, then do the white cut-ins on another layer, and if I didn't like it, just delete it. It gives you a lot of freedom, a lot of choices, and takes probably more time, but still.
Would you
go.
Would you say, however, that the introduction of the Cintiq to that process made a huge difference?
Sped things up enormously. I already described how it was difficult to start a line and end it where you wanted it on a traditional graphics tablet without the monitor right there.
That's right.
Like you're drawing right on the screen. The beauty of working in digital is that you can erase, and it doesn't affect the paper surface at all. Whereas in traditional media, if I'm inking something and I make a mistake, I either have to work that mistake into the art or use whiteout, which then changes the surface, and any subsequent black line I put over that area of whiteout is going to have a different quality from the rest of the black lines I've got in the picture, and it shows. And it's like, so every bit of whiteout is a little failure, basically. But in digital, no. Use white as much as you want, and it doesn't affect the surface. Your black lines are going to be the same no matter what. It's like, a lot of freedom.
It's kind of a follow-up to that. Now that you can do black on white and white on black in the same image,
Yeah.
which I'm sure you could figure out a way to do it with traditional media, but now it's easy.
Yeah.
Has that changed, in your opinion, how you put your compositions together? Is that something you struggle with?
I mean, simply the ability to erase without consequence is an awesome freedom. I am free to take risks with the black on white simply because I can make that go away. I mean, if I want to try something, I don't know if this will work exactly, let me try this. I'll create a new layer, do it on that, and see if it looks good. If it doesn't, delete the layer and try something else.
The subtraction event becomes less of an annoyance and a failure, and it becomes more of a potential tool.
Yeah, and you can create some, and occasionally you can create some happy accidents working with white on black, in the digital. And say there were some characters I drew for a company that I did very heavy blacks on the guy's robes and stuff like that. But what I do is I make little white cut-in lines shading to, and it worked great. It looked like little highlights from reflections on the ground or things like that. It looked very good. It gives you a nice luminous quality to your stuff. So yeah.
Did you do that in the old day, like that kind of quality black with little white cut-ins? Did you do that in traditional media?
No. That would have required a scratch board, and I didn't have that available to me. So.
I saw a drawing once. I'm sorry to jump off topic. Seems relevant and interesting. I saw a drawing once where someone had drawn some hair, and I noticed that it was done with graphite, and I noticed that there were bits of highlighted white hair.
Yeah.
And I said, I've never seen this before. And the guy said, yeah. What I do is I draw those hairs first with just a metal. I don't use ink. I don't use graphite. I actually draw the line in. I dent the paper. So when I sketch over it, it leaves the pencil doesn't.
Oh, that's interesting. I've never used that sort of technique. That's interesting.
I thought that was really neat. Of course, I had to go try it immediately. But so concerning digital and media, and physical media, I can't remember if it was Scotty talking about this once, maybe Stephen Donnelly from Shroud of the Avatar, or perhaps even you. I remember hearing about the fact that people who work in digital these days often lament that they don't have physical originals anymore,
right,
to sell.
Yeah.
So you used to, like the Ultima 6 painting, for example, beautiful acrylic painting hanging in the Portalarium office. We all walk in and we go, look at all those brush strokes you can't see on the box cover. It's amazing. You marvel at it. And but now there is no
original. Yeah.
So have you gone back and started working in physical media to that end?
I have. I've been in my Patreon. I've been going back to pen and ink, or in this case, pen and marker, because marker technology is now up to the point where it looks really good. But I'm doing black and white stuff in traditional media again after a long hiatus, and it actually works pretty well. I mean, I'm back in the realm where, if I make a mistake, it's on there. Unless I want to go to the whiteout, I want to try and avoid whiteout as much as possible. So it's you're still walking the tightrope without a net, but it's there's just something. There's something about the quality of an actual line of ink on paper that is differently compelling than what you get on the computer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So for the art nerds out there like myself, back in the day, were you using like Sharpies, repeatographs, like little micron pens? What was your pen and ink weapons of choice?
Back when I was doing the illustrations for Ultima and stuff like that? That was, at the start, it was technical pens.
Okay.
Metal barrel with a little metal wire down the center, and you'd think they'd clog up at the moment's notice.
The thing that I find, for years I was told, get a repeatograph set,
repeatographs, that's it.
Good Lord, I finally bought a set, and I'm thinking, I start making these lines, I'm like, wow, these lines, and then I start making little Denis Loubet hash marks, right? And that little plunger,
it's perfect.
The plunger would, so I would make a line like this, and I would hold the pen at an angle, right? And every time I would lift, the plunger would fall out, so I would end up with these lines that had
little ticks on the end.
Yeah,
ooh,
and I was like,
that's
so I started having to hold the pen perfectly upright. And I
don't recall if I had that issue.
Goodness, that drove me crazy.
That would be maddening.
I went back to the microns and zigs and the pens because they didn't do that. But I was so sad. I bought hot press illustration board. And all in this whole repeatograph set and I was like, in that stupid little tongue thing. Would just, it would just wreak havoc on me, and it drove me nuts.
So now imagine going back in time a little bit further, back when, like, and I'm sure that you use these at some point if you ever took art classes, when we did, like, line art with crow quill and India ink.
Yeah.
And you literally took it's called a crow quill, it wasn't truly a crow quill, but it was a little metal thing that had a tiny little quill tip on the end. And that little tip, it had the little split.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that little split got dipped in the bottle of India ink, and then you begin to draw. And there was nothing worse in the world than it catches on a little ridge in the paper, some little piece of fiber in the paper, and goes.
So I as a calligrapher, I have that problem. The other problem that I had, and also with the rapidograph, was there would be a fiber or a hair, and
squirt the ink out further.
It would just cause this giant that would channel the ink and it would just cause this sea of ink. And I was like, and then it would just drag. I was like,
right. And that's another issue with working with traditional media.
Oh my goodness.
That's working with traditional media is where I got my, my obsessive hand washing.
Oh God, yes.
Because you get skin oil on the paper,
and
changes the line quality.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so I'd be washing my hands all the time, and I still do that, though I don't have to anymore. I'm working with a stylus and a mouse. I worked for the early Ultima pictures. I worked with the technical pens. I'd outline in a heavy line and do the interior details in a fine line. And then after that period, I went to crow quill, like Scott's talking about.
Wow.
I didn't have the problems, or I had them, I solved them, and
you're able to move on.
Able to move on, and I had a technique for using those things that worked for me. When I was at Origin evaluating portfolios, I would see so many examples sent in of people just these anemic pen lines that just sort of wander scraggly over the picture, and this cross hatching to try and shade it. I would, oh God. And what was weird, it was all the bad art I was getting was all the same. It was the same errors all the time. It was weird. But anyway, my technique I would use short, savage strokes. And I'd vary the pressure of each individual stroke to have the underside of an arm be heavy line and the upper part be lighter, a thinner line.
Yeah.
But the short strokes worked really great. It gave me my own style where things are kind of almost a little faceted and stuff, and it was a clean style and it worked really well. So I used that for many years, doing stuff for Iron Crown Enterprises. I did illustrations for their Robin Hood and a Middle-earth role-playing game.
Yeah, I remember those.
Stuff, and some of that turned out really good. I have examples of that on my website.
Yeah, line weight is something that you don't notice it unless you're looking for it.
Right.
But it's off when it's not there.
Yeah, the rapidographs were weird because it was something that didn't give you any line weight.
Yeah.
You had to consciously go, okay, I'm going thick, and grab that pen and use that one.
That drove me nuts too.
Yeah, it was weird.
Even with the technical markers, the zigs and the microns, you could still work it a little bit.
Yeah, work a little bit.
Yeah,
right.
the drawing, there were two techniques that I'm familiar with in terms of line weight. One is the fat lining technique, is one instructor used to call it, which is the darker on the dark side, if you're outlining something. And the other one was the more space between the object and what's behind it, the thicker the line should be. So, in this case,
thicker foreground.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
The line between my hand and the cup would be thinner than the line between my arm and the wall.
Right.
And
right. All sorts of weird little.
It's fun to look
things
at.
like
I remember looking at your artwork and noticing the decisions that you made and thinking about them and wondering. and wondering why, or appreciating them, but
Or emulating them in cases.
and of course emulating them.
Yes, I do that nowadays too. It's my favorite artist right now is Mike Mignola, who can do more with a single scraggly line than most artists can do with a whole page of carefully rendered characters. It's like, damn, he's the epitome of the economy of line.
Well, and his use of contrast of lights and darks and
lights
shadow
and
use
darks.
is very
Just
amazing.
So.
Cezanne would do the pen and ink contour drawings, and I think there was a quote that was, someone said, "It looks like it took you 5 minutes to do that." I said, "Yes, but it took me 30 years to make it look like it took 5 minutes."
Yes. Yes, I know that what Mike is doing is not effortless.
Yeah.
all the more horror to me to try and get things. Yeah, basically to at least please artists, your art has to look effortless.
Yeah, look
I
forced.
love that look.
Yeah.
You know, there's artists that their brushstrokes are thick paint, and there's this, and they've defined the planes of the figure and stuff, and they've got these great colors in there, and I go, damn, I wish I could do that. And it looked like it took him 5 minutes, but no, it took him years of research and trial and error to get
the terms forced or self-conscious when you're self-critiquing are the bane of an artist's existence.
Yeah, that's another thing. People kept telling me for years and years that I have a style, and I could never see it. It was like every piece of art I did was a one-off and a completely different style, and I could never really see my style until I did enough, and enough years had gone past that decades later I can look back at my old stuff and go, oh yeah, I begin to see my style now.
Yeah.
It's not something I can identify because it's not something I consciously, created. So
in terms of blast from the past, crow quill, media, rapidograph pens. I used to go to your website a lot when I was younger.
Oh yeah.
The good old Denis Loubet page, that looked like it was.
How embarrassing! Set up a web page and then never went back to it again.
Hey, these are time capsules. These are amazing. But one of I still have a folder from my 245 meg hard drive.
Right.
Because I have that entire hard drive saved on a CD. That and one of these folders has 3ds Max materials.
Yes.
Downloaded from your website.
Well, these weren't 3ds Max materials. These were 3ds materials. This was DOS.
Yes.
DOS version of Max.
Like back in 90 or 93,
yeah,
92?
Yeah, something like
so
that.
I remember thinking, I'm going to use these someday.
Oh,
and
I wish.
Are these relevant to anyone anymore?
No, nobody uses Max 3ds Max DOS or 3ds DOS anymore. And the material system has been changed so drastically since that. I found it very difficult in 3D Studio Max to get the same effects that I was getting in the DOS version. The bump maps just didn't seem to work the same and that stuff. But boy. It's well worth all the other features that 3D Studio Max provides. I have to thank, from my viewpoint as an artist working in the digital realm, I have to thank Microsoft for Windows. I know that's unpopular, but I have to thank Microsoft for Windows for the sudden emergence and prevalence of the 24-bit graphics cards. Because suddenly there was a big popular platform that you could get 24-bit color. And it's like, and the graphic card companies were competing to see how good they could make their 24-bit, how fast they could make their 24-bit graphics. And the artist, as an artist, I was just going, wow, millions of colors!
Yeah, you don't like palletizing?
Awesome. No, God. Palletizing the Wing Commander palettes to do the control panels and all that stuff. Yes, that was always amazing. Using a combination of deluxe paint and Autodesk Animator to manage the palettes for the
restrictive palettes.
256 colors for the entire
and then
piece.
the rotating palettes for the flame effect.
Oh yes. If you're going to do that, you got to reserve a bit of your palette and say, let's do that.
Well, that's because that reminds me. I mean, when I first moved to Austin, and then I was wanting to try to get a job in the industry. Because you remember those old days, I was I must have come and visited like 3 or 4 or 5 times, saying, "Am I good enough now? Am I good enough now?"
Oh, dude!
But I mean, the truth is, at the time, it was probably best that I didn't get in then because the media didn't have the freedom that we have now.
Right.
Oh my God, I think it would have driven me mad because I remember very vividly going over to your desk where you were working and watching, because I think it was you and Michael Priest was sitting nearby as well.
Yeah.
And both of you were struggling to take individual colored pixels and try to desperately assemble them into faces that were used for the talking heads for some wing command or something at the time. And you were having to very carefully choose, okay, God, that brown is not light enough. What are the 3? Oh, I can choose, of the 3 browns, I could choose that one might work. And then you're trying to basically build a little Lego drawing in the very limited Lego colors of the face, and then doing the very next frame, which made his mouth go,
open wider.
All within the same palette. And I just remember looking at that and going, do I really want to do this? Am I really trying to make this my living? Because I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, the different computers had different problems. I mean, the Commodore graphics were divided into character cells, and so I'm painting with the I'm doing a picture with the koala pad, and each character cell can only hold 4 colors. Out of the 8 color palette, and if I accidentally stray into a character cell with a 5th color, it changes it changes one of the colors in that pixel into that color I just strayed in, and all the other character that shared those same 4 colors.
Oh,
I have to go in and repair and pixel edit and try and fix them. Just insane.
See, that's not art. That's insane.
Engineering.
Yeah, it's like engineering Tetris for the insane.
Well, strangely enough, I can my own strange failings. I can work at 3D far longer than I can work in 2D in a given time frame, in a given sitting. In 3D, it's like playing a game. You're trying to achieve an effect, and this program is there and offers you many different ways to get there. Some are dead ends. Some are things. It's like playing a game. The best way to achieve. My character got killed. I got to go back and try a different path to get to the thing. And that's what working in 3D is like for me. Whereas in doing stuff in 2D, it's going. My brain is too busy going, I should be doing better than this.
It sounds like you enjoy the discovery aspect
yes.
of it.
Yeah.
You got the 2D part down pat.
Yeah, well, there are still, I look at stuff in other people's art, and I go, why can't I get that effect? I mean, there's lighting effects and stuff, and one of my big failings is strangely enough for me to say, is color. I do not have a good sense of color, and it's like it's not through any weird disability. It's just I never studied it enough in my years of doing art. I did too much black and white, I guess, and so. When I was working as a contractor at Kings Isle, working on Wizard 101 and stuff like that as a contract environment artist. But I would listen to the other artists there, and they were talking about other big name artists, that are doing concept work at Disney and various other things, and they were talking about they keep their palettes to this restricted color realm when they're working on this, and they work their contrast, and they draw attention to details with high with high details, and the backgrounds are kind of blurry, and I was going, man, there's a lot of stuff I have not researched enough because I got to admit that stuff is vitally important, and I'm playing catch up right now. I'm trying to do more with theatrical kind of lighting and atmospheric colors, and I'm studying Mignola and Frazetta, figuring what do I leave out of this painting. I don't want to detail everything, because then the eye is drawn to everything, and you don't want it that way. You want it drawn to to a specific point, and you want to lead the eye there. And I do my best.
Well, it is surprising though that a lot of the concept artists right now that are being raved about and utilize, at least their techniques utilized through some of the folks that like you listened to when they were the concept artists at King's Isle. They have a lot of the freedoms of those tools that were afforded to them only because of the advent of the digital computers and the digital means of like Corel Paint, not Corel Paint, but Painter and things like that. You just couldn't do those years ago at all. Mm-hmm. And boy, those freedoms are wonderful. And going back and doing natural media, I know you felt the horror of, I can't control Z,
right?
Because
there's no undo.
Yeah, there's no undo. I'm gonna panic now.
Yeah.
It just
every time you put the pen to the paper, it's like, okay, I'm taking a terrible risk, Vader. This had better work. I just dated myself. So yeah.
So you had mentioned enjoying 3D.
Yeah.
So speaking of 3D, but also related to that website I mentioned of yours before, so the Ultima fans out there will enjoy this. Also on that website was the first 3D foray of Origin, into the Ultima world of Ultima 9. And there were some of the original storyboards posted on your website, and along with some very sarcastic and colorful comments by the artist. One of my favorite ones specifically is your storyboard for the scene where Raven ties up the Avatar, brands him, and then kisses him.
Yes.
And your comments were something to the effect of, I don't ask questions, I just do what I'm told.
Yeah, I storyboard what they tell me.
And I kind of got the impression that maybe you didn't agree with some of the...
I thought it was cheesy, but hey, I was instructed, these events had to happen in the storyboard, in the storyboard. So, okay, we work it as best we can. And I was in a room with like Mike Moreland, Jeff D., a couple of other artists, I think even John Watson.
Oh wow,
was there?
So a while back.
Yeah, and we were a bunch of creative guys, and we hashed out all these storyboards, the mid-game storyboards for Ultima 9. That was an awesome experience. That was great. I was doing that, I think, as a contractor. I wasn't. I was no longer an employee at Origin there.
Yeah, because you were brought back in to help
left.
That.
I was brought back in to do that, and I found that actually quite fun, doing storyboards, because it's like you're running the movie in your head. Of course, you're running it over and over, seeing what looks good and what doesn't, but it turned out really great. And I learned a lot from Michael Moreland, who had a history of video production and stuff like that. And he taught me tricks, cut in the middle of the action and stuff. And boy, that works. It makes your cuts invisible. It's great. But yeah, the storyboards were fun. And even the branding of the Avatar one was fun to do, because I got to draw a woman in a nightgown, with a branding iron. Not exactly my fetish, but there you go. And
I need this.
And then I got to see how these things turned out when they returned from Blur Studios, and some were better than others. I mean, Blur Studios, God bless them, they did what they could with the material. I mean, and the deadline they were under must have been horrific.
Oh yeah.
But that the branding scene was almost unwatchable. But I'm going to have to put those. I'm going to have to find those videos and put them up to say, here's the storyboard and here's the final.
Well,
and they did a really good job. They held to the storyboard.
They're
really
right
well.
there on the Ultima 9 CD. I think they're big videos.
Yeah.
One of the first time Bink
Find
was
them.
used. They're .big files. They're right there on the U9 CD if you need them. Another thing on your website in terms of 3D animation was the intro for Ultima 7 Part 2, Serpent Isle, where the ship is going through the water.
Yeah,
I think
old.
You had posted the extended version that wasn't part of the game.
It wasn't really extended. What it was the ship was sailing in an ocean, and the ocean had animated waves. And that meant that whole bottom section of the frame changed every frame. And like I mentioned earlier, we couldn't fit that animation on the discs we were shipping on. And so we had to instead make it this polar expedition where the ship is sailing through an ice flow where the bottom of the screen where the ocean waves were no longer changes because now it's ice and snow. And so we had to keep the amount of frame area that actually animates to a minimum.
Which, of course, changes the whole fiction of the story
right.
of that scene.
Yeah.
Wow.
But that's what we did. And, I can't remember how I assembled that animation from that thing. I must have those frames somewhere.
So speaking of Ultima 7 Part 2, have you done any other voice acting since those days?
Well, in a manner of speaking, yes, because I host a podcast called The Non-Profits every other Wednesday.
Does it make any money? I'm just kidding.
No. And I do the intros on those, and sometimes I'll do funny voices and stuff. And so yes, that's a form of voice acting.
Any serpent voices from Ultima 7 find their way in there?
No, that one was far too rough on the larynx to the serpent voice I did while inhaling. I would talk while inhaling, which gave it this horrible growly quality, but also made me cough a lot. So.
No, there's a tidbit right
there you go. Something to make it sound inhuman. Talk while you're inhaling.
See that right there. That to me is worth worth everything. Let's see. Okay, here's a fun question. So it's been mentioned several times. Both of you have mentioned artists that you guys have. That you're currently interested in, that you're emulating or learning from or drooling at. Is there any particular artist that has always been your go-to source of inspiration? Is there anyone that you wish you could meet or had the pleasure of meeting or come or gone?
Well, for me, it has to be Frazetta. He's the one who gave me this career because his cover for Conan the Adventurer started me on my art career because I saw that and said, that's what I want to do. Oddly enough, it took me decades and decades to do my first book cover. So it was all game illustrations and box illustrations for games and stuff like that. So
got to start somewhere.
We got to start somewhere. And I studied comic books for exaggerated versions of anatomy and stuff like that. But
with the Draw My Character stuff, I've seen specifically the one for Commander Falcon. There's a lot of very, very, the very kind of, a lot of comic book poses. They kind of have this very lean forward kind of. I don't want to say hunched, but it's just ready. There's that exaggerated pose. I've seen a lot of the Draw My Character work that you've done has a very comic book style,
right?
As opposed to
people ask for a dynamic pose, and so you go to comic books for that because they're the ones that really exaggerate everything.
So there's that Loubet style that you may not see. So along those lines, have you ever did you ever have a mentor or anybody that, or a particular teacher that you worked with consistently throughout your career?
Nobody consciously, really. I mean, nobody really consciously taught me anything. I mean, I would look at their work and see how they solved problems they came up against, but I didn't really have a teacher that taught me anything.
It's actually hard to find those folks.
Yeah,
Find people who are willing to spend the time to sit with you and help guide you when you're, like, oh, try this, or here's a technique I use. And so when you can find that kind of thing, it's pure gold. I mean, it's like finding good inspiration for your artwork. It's just really hard, and when you can find it, you better treasure it.
Yeah. Now, there were artists that helped me. I mean, I would talk to various artists I could at conventions way back in the day, and they would give me tips. They would give me encouragement. They would give me suggestions. And, I learned from one that, you might try Herculean drafting film to paint on. And I tried that, and it worked with acrylics. And I'm going, I would never have imagined that, a non-absorbent surface would have held paint so well. And I learned how to use colored pencil by talking to another guy, because I did a lot of colored pencil in some of my paintings. I did mixed media a lot, and I learned a lot. I learned lots of little tips from various artists and things like that, and then I learned a lot just by studying the work of other artists and going, I see how he solves this.
So conversely, have you ever had any students, so to speak, or people that you've mentored, or is that something that you do, or
not consciously? But I have fans that write in saying, I studied your artwork and see how you did this, and so they looked at my artwork the same way I looked at Frank Frazetta's artwork, and saw how I did stuff, and I'm going, that's mind blowing.
Yeah.
Well, and I can tell you, based on that, literally, maybe not consciously, but unconsciously, it happened even in the form of, because Dennis and I used to game a lot, and being at those games, paper role-playing games and such, there'd be time in between scenes where Dennis wasn't,
I'm not the main character in the scene,
so he's sketching. Now, of course, he's digging from the wonderful gold of the inspiration of whatever's going on in the game at the time. So he'd be sketching stuff based on what was happening in the game. And I was lucky enough to, of course, be there, and then I got to see him as he was doing it. So he was doing some great sketches. I was looking at the results of that and going, oh, I like that little technique. So yeah, in that you unconsciously were performing lots of great art at the time. I was also gleaning from it as much as I could.
And whenever people come up to me and ask, I'll tell them everything I can about what I do. And how I do it, but I've never actually done a class for anyone, or anything like that.
So I mentioned earlier that I've used your artwork as studies in the past. The Hearth of Britannia has become much more than the original idea, but originally it was supposed to be nothing more than a cookbook. The Hearth of Britannia was a companion cookbook for Ultima. Now, I had the idea long before everything in the world had a companion cookbook.
Right.
But it was going to be this massive book, and any food that was ever mentioned in Britannia in any Ultima game, I wanted there to be a real recipe for.
Cool.
And I've made very good progress, but I wanted it to be illustrated and laid out in the style of the Ultima manuals,
right?
And I wanted the food and the steps to be illustrated in the Loubet style.
Wow!
And people said, "Well, why don't you have Denis Loubet do it?" Well, I'm thinking, this is literally going to be hundreds of images.
Oh yeah.
I could not afford to do that. I don't know if you would be interested in doing that. But it's a gargantuan task of life.
Right.
Is what it is. But that being said, there's been talk and joke of perhaps kickstarting a special edition printing or something. Digital distribution's most likely the way to go, especially not to infuriate electronic arts.
Right.
So Stephen Eamon did get away with the Ultimate Collector's Guide.
Yeah.
What would be wonderful and more manageable and more realistic to both of us would be perhaps chapter headings, chapter illustrations in the Blade of the Avatar style.
Pastries.
Yeah.
Hors d'oeuvres.
Materials.
Ponderings.
What are the material components for this dish? Yeah.
proteins.
Yes, you had 3 black pearls.
Frank's now holding his head. He just can't believe we're going off into these bizarre...
Well, those are all the questions that I...
Right. Oh, okay. Sulfurous ash.
Pondering.
You guys have killed the battery on my backup camera.
Awesome.
The primary is still going and the sound is still going.
Yay.
But maybe we ought to wrap it up.
Okay.
So, let me crawl in here a little bit. I'd like to thank Rustic Dragon, Joseph Toschlog.
Hey.
Scott Jones, especially for hosting this event. And our guest of honor, Denis Loubet.
Thank you.
I would like to do a Hearth of Britannia thing and give each person a chance to say some closing statements. So let's start with Scotty, and then if we still have time, Joseph, and then finally Denis.
Well, in that this interview is about and for Denis and for the fans of the people who've enjoyed Denis all these years, I'd like to simply chime in to say it's been an honor since I met Denis years and years and years ago. It may have been even long before Origin. It may have been back in the Spook House days when we were actually doing stuff, because I was there before I was even hired at Origin, and came in as an intern. So even before that, I'd had a chance to grow to know Denis and to enjoy his company, and it's been years of really enjoyable interactions and learning events, and just having the joy of being able to kind of be an artist on the same team with Denis and kind of gain the incredible benefits from that. Hopefully there'll be many more years to come. It's always been a joy to work with Denis whenever I've had the chance, and hopefully there'll be many more wonderful years of those really valuable interactions. Thank you for being my friend.
Well, thank you, Scott. You've been an inspiration for many years.
Thank you. Likewise.
All right.
Well, we typically, in a true Hearth of Britannia style, the host or the guest of honor ends. So I'm going to jump in front of you.
Go for it.
So also in true Hearth of Britannia style, we generally it's a closing toast. So I have to be holding something here. In terms of inspiration, when I first came to Austin, I met Scott Jones, and Scott's like, I did the concept art for Ultima 9. It's like, oh, you did? I'm flipping through the Ultima 9 strategy guide with Scott Jones's concept art. And he's like, oh, you can here, I'll bring that in. You can look at the actual drawings. I'm all excited.
Yeah, I kept that stuff, including some of Denis's stuff, because he did a lot of the concept art for the character costumes and such.
Yeah.
And so I got to meet Scott Jones, and of course, I knew that you were local. But at this point I've met Richard and Star and Dallas and all these heroes and people that I'd grown up that I'd only known in Pixel Worlds, and you and your various incarnations in the Ultima series, with various spellings of your name. And when I finally got a chance to meet you, which was at the Hobloth last November, I think we only got to speak for like 2 minutes. I was so busy, but it's just been it's been a wonderful privilege, and I think it's lucky for me to get a chance to actually sit and have a conversation and a meal, and I really appreciate that. It's always nice when your heroes become real people, and I will not tell the story as to why Denis is a real person to me, but I'll tell you that some other time. But this is to you. I will drink to your health. Right. So this is to Monsieur Loubet.
Hear, hear.
Thank you. Well, it's much the same thing with me. I mean, realizing I have fans is not the same as meeting them. And meeting my fans is like, wow, it's awesome. And I have to thank my fans for making me as successful as I've been.
I could be more ridiculous if you want.
Oh, sure. It's just, yes. Look at me with stars in your eyes. But yeah, let me say that. So I want to thank all my fans. And my name is spelled Denis with one N, and Loubet, Loubet. It's a French name. My father was from Paris, France. So that's a bit of history. And since this is supposedly about me, I should mention www.denisloubet.com.
Where you can download 3DS materials from 1972.
No, there's www.patreon.com/Denis Loubet. And my new 3D printing effort is www.shapeways.com/shops/ I had it. Alternate universe. One word.
And of
Alternate
course,
universe.
Alternate universe.
And of course, draw my character.
And of course, Draw My Character. www.drawmycharacter.com. Those are all the main feature websites that I have created. That
I will put links in the description.
Yes.
Or the article.
I was saying, just in case those links don't remain with the video.
He spends his time juggling all these sites like an insane Cirque du Soleil acrobat.
Yes,
all
all the social media that I have to go through to try and make a living is really hard right now. I'm trying to live without taking, without, slaving away at another company right now. I would rather slave away directly for my fans, and so I'm trying this. And if I can get enough fans, it'll work.
Awesome. So thank everybody for watching or reading, and maybe next time I'll have someone new.
Thanks, Frank.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.